Welcome back to the Mildew Twang Outdoors podcast, where we chronicle our time spent in the Delta, the swamps, the piney woods, and beyond. Here, we share our experiences and stories ranging from simple country living to lesser-known stories about American culture and what all of this means for us as Christians in today's world. Last week's stories will be hard to beat, but we have a doozy for you today. I didn't expect this to happen, but as we spent time together and shared our stories, we began to relive the experiences that we had, and several situations that we had pushed away from our minds came back to the surface. Podcast episode 1 discussed how cold it was in the Mobile-Tensaw Delta during an ice storm, but nothing could have prepared us for the sheer cold we would face out west. We also previously touched on the existence of cacti and their unforgiving spines, but did you know that one of our hunting buddies was set up by a wise family of owls? Strap on your saddlebags and let's hit the trail. Welcome back to the Inner Sanctum. In the 1995 movie, Tall Tale, The Unbelievable Adventures of Pecos Bill, a young man named Daniel Hackett lives on a farm in Paradise Valley. Daniel can't stand the farming and frontiering way of life, and he dreams of moving to New York City. There's a rich and greedy land baron named Mr. Stiles who attempts to take the farm from Daniel's parents. In doing so, he would not only be removing their livelihood, but he would be removing their entire way of life and their culture. In a scuffle with the land baron's men, Daniel's father hands Daniel the deed to the farm property. Daniel's father is then shot and injured, and Daniel runs off and proceeds to vent his emotions before falling to sleep. As Daniel wakes up, he realizes that he's in a dry and barren desert. Two outlaws ride up and harass him. However, Daniel is saved by a strange fellow who goes by the name of Pecos Bill. For those who are unaware, Pecos Bill is a legendary Western folk hero. He is known for superhuman feats of strength, including being able to shoot out the stars in the sky and roping and riding tornadoes. In a bizarre twist of fate, Daniel and Pecos team up with John Henry and Paul Bunyan. They all end up in jail after a fistfight in a saloon, at which point Babe, the legendary Blue Ox, saves them. And if you guys don't know these folks, you really need to do some reading on your American folk heroes. Stiles, the land baron, shows back up and steals the deed from Daniel after causing Daniel to doubt his three new, greater-than-life friends, and he heads off on his own. Ultimately, Daniel overcomes his doubt and rejoins Pecos, Paul, and John. Together, they defeat the evil land baron before Daniel returns home to his father, who is now recovering. Daniel tells his father that he's no longer willing to run off to the big city. They make up and live happily ever after, but not until Paul Bunyan, John Henry, and Pecos Bill show up at the farm to say goodbye. Pecos leaves his horse with Daniel and rides off into the sunset after lassoing a big old twister. As a young fellow, this movie, however silly it might seem, had a huge impact on my life. Pecos Bill, played by Patrick Swayze for all you lady folks out there, is a larger-than-life character. But as a young kid who is terrified of thunderstorms and tornadoes, he was just what I needed. A legend so great and so strong he could overcome the very things that would hold me down in life. Likewise, Paul Bunyan and John Henry are incredible folk heroes in their own rights. On those rare rain-soaked mornings when Mama would whip up a batch of homemade pancakes, I would make believe that I was in an eating contest with Paul Bunyan. Now you may know why this was the case, but if you don't, listen closely. Paul Bunyan was rumored to have a frying pan that was an acre in size. This pan was used primarily to cook pancakes. Additionally, it was rumored that Paul could eat as many as 50 pancakes in 1 minute. Now how about that? It was no surprise that, coupled with the original log cabin pancake syrup, I would eat myself sick. Now John Henry, that fellow could have beaten Hercules in an arm wrestling contest if you asked me. He used two 10-pound hammers to drill a 14-foot hole into bare rock in a heated competition with a newfangled steam engine. The sheer strength and might of John Henry, coupled with his gentle nature and his upstanding morals, was an outstanding role model for this young kid. However, he also got the best of me when I decided to recreate his hammer drilling feat in the garage with a pair of 2-pound mauls. The garage wall never saw me coming, just like I never saw the spanking that followed until it was far too late. I can ramble on and on about these heroes, Buffalo Bill, Calamity Jane, Daniel Boone, Wild Bill Hickok, Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and many more. And while we never did make legendary status like these American folk heroes, one thing is for certain: we lived.
All right, so I got a story. Tim shot and this might have been the second trip, I don't know, but I told him, I said, my buddy told me he lives out there. He said, don't shoot the first mule deer. And this was a mule deer hunt, not the antelope hunt. Don't shoot the first mule deer you see, because if you do, you'll see a bunch of bigger ones later. And so Tim and I pulled up there, and I remember there was this gulch down, and there was these two great big mule deer, and we had the scope on them, right, Tim? And we could have killed them easy. And we said, well, we'll wait for bigger ones. And we should have killed them, because the bigger ones never came. But you killed a 3x3 6-point, and we pulled out there in that thing, and we started looking for him. I remember it was a snowstorm coming in, and we had to hurry back to town so we wouldn't get snowed in. But you shot this thing down, and it ran, and so we started looking for him. And I think we didn't have any real powerful lights, and he wasn't where you thought he was, and so we kept walking and kept walking and kept walking, and then all of a sudden we said, well, it's probably better that we go back to the Suburban. And so we started going back, and I went, well, isn't it this way? And Tim was saying, no, I think it's this way. And I went, oh, crap, we're fixing to have to spend the night out here on this plain with the snowstorm coming in. And I can just think of he and I cuddling on the dirt, and I was scared. And I looked at Tim, and I said, which way's the car? And I started hitting the key fob to make the horn blow. No doing. So you remember that, Tim?
Oh yeah, I remember. And John was touching on how dark it was. It was dark.
Tim and I, not knowing where the truck was, I said, Tim, where do you think it is? And he said, I think it's this way. And he just started marching that way. And he had, I think, no idea. But as it turns out, we found it. And I put my full faith in him, because I knew I didn't know where it was. And I don't get turned around much, but I did that night. Were you confident in where the truck was, or were you just flying by the seat of your pants?
I had no idea where the truck was. The truck was in Wyoming. That's the only thing I knew. I could see the fear in your eyes, Chip. I mean, everybody sees these kids whenever they start to well up, and those little tears start forming in the sides of their eyes.
That was me, 100%.
This next story takes a break from the hunt and highlights a challenge that we didn't know we would be facing. Now, grilling is an easy task, but only if you can get the charcoal to light.
It was like 70 degrees out there, and they said this front was coming in, and it dropped from like 70 something to 19 in a matter of just a few hours. I do remember cooking the tenderloin steak on that grill we bought at wherever, Tim.
They're equivalent to Dollar General.
Right, and I couldn't understand why it wasn't cooking, because I had a fire under it and I was on it, but it was because it was 19 degrees, and even though the fire was under it, we ate raw steak. You remember that night?
That steak was awesome, though. That was a good fillet.
If it's not mooing, I'm not chewing.
And what about the story where somebody slammed their hand down on a cactus? John, were you there for that one, or was that something different?
All I know is I like to watch those old westerns where the guys are out there in those, on the range and riding their horses and making fires and going up into caves and stuff. And we were out there in just such a place. And Tim he said, "Hey, look at that hole over there across that canyon. There's some owls in there." And I went, "Oh, cool." And so I scuttered off that hill. And anyway, I had these thick Bob Allen gloves on. And anyway, I was getting in position to look at those things, and I saw them, and I went, "Man, that's beautiful. This is something else." And about that time, I kind of fell backwards, and I put my hand back to catch myself, and it went right dang on a cactus. So I picked up my hand and I grabbed my wrist, and I kind of fell backwards towards about 1,000-foot drop. But Lord grabbed me, and that's that story. And at least from my perspective, I'd like to hear it from Tim's.
I tell you, you see stuff out there in Wyoming that you'll never see anywhere else. I think this is when we weren't antelope hunting. I think we were mule deer hunting. And so we were up and down gullies, ravines all over the place. And Chip's right. Jay and I don't know how far we'd walked. We'd walked a long way up and down mountains. Anyway, I find this hole in this rock. It's kind of unusual to see a big hole like that. But I saw this big hole, and so I looked in there, and just like Chip said, there's a big giant owl or a family of owls looking back at me. It was really cool. I wish I had its picture, but I don't. But anyway, I tell Chip, it's like, "Hey man, that hole over there's got a bunch of owls in it." And just like Chip said, he jumped down. He had to go see it. Well, coming back, I was standing up on top of I don't know, it's a little 3-foot elevation difference, I guess. And Chip was coming back, and just like he said, he wasn't paying a lot of attention. He reached back with his hand, hit the ground right on top of the cactus. I'm sitting there seeing what's going on, but it's one of those deals where you don't have time to say, "Man, you better look out."
We have time for one last story. Mr. Chip, what was your favorite memory altogether?
All right, last story. John Chapman worked his magic. He's a charming fellow. There was a volunteer fire department out there, and we walked in that place because we saw all these antelope on this, land where all these oil rigs were and everything. And he dialed in his phone, realized we need to go talk to these people at this oil rig place. We walked in, and there was nobody there. They had all gone to lunch, and we walked in the whole place yelling for them, "Hey, can we hunt your land? Are y'all here?" And we walked in the room there, and there were wallets on the counter, and we hung around there. Am I wrong, John?
The doe tags were only good for private land. And so JT Oil, we saw those antelope and their property, and we saw a sign for their building pulled up, and Chip went out and put his best salesman line on them.
And anyway, they said, "Oh, kill all the antelope you want. Please do that." And so I killed one, right? I sneaked around a rock. Yeah. And so we went back to town, and Jay said, "Well, it's just a few minutes left. Let's go back out there." And so we all giddy up. I just remember it was a 30-minute drive, but it was straight as an arrow once you went around that beautiful rock. And so I put the cruise control on that Suburban at 120 miles per hour.
We had like 30 minutes of shooting light left, 35 minutes, and this was a 30-minute drive.
Jaybird was cocked and loaded and had his binoculars and everything. Tim, you remember this, right?
I remember, yep.
And so we came over that hill, and all those dang antelopes were out there. And that scunner, Jay Caldwell, jumped out of the truck shooting. And I don't know what happened, but I've never seen anything more glorious in my whole life. That rascal, they were running, and you shot, and I looked over at Tim. He said, "Yeah, he got one. He don't know it yet. He's dead." And I ain't going to say the rest of the story, what we did. All I know is we went back to the house with the antelope. Right on. Peace out.
we were on that private property that John was just talking about on gravel. It wasn't even. It's one of those roads where it just has tire track. So, it's I don't know, up and down hills. Chip's driving, doing about 80. This herd of antelope goes crossing the road. Chip slams on the brakes, just like he said. Jay slams the door open. He goes out. He looked like Rambo or something. Luckily, the gun was pointed the right way. About the time Jay hit the ground, the gun went off. And this poor little doe antelope crossing the road about, I don't know, 100 yards in front of us, maybe.
No, much further than that.
She was about 270.
So anyway, 270 yards. Jay shoots. Chip and I are sitting in the Suburban that's still moving. And I'm like, I hope we don't run over Jay, but, hey, if we do, we do. But anyway, the gun goes off. All you see is you see that antelope you just see it, the flash when the bullet hit it, just busting out the back.
It was a tuft of hair, yeah, right.
Yeah, that's when, it's like, yep, he's dead. He just doesn't know it yet.
That was like John. John came back and said, I was watching through the binoculars and he shot. He came back and said, I don't think I got it. And I went, yeah, you did.
Man, Chip, that last story was a wild one. Now here's a short public service announcement. The particular events and stories we have shared have been embellished in our minds a bit, especially during the celebrations afterward, hence the name Tall Tales and Lies for these podcasts. For the record, in that last story, we were hunting on private property with permission, and we were on a road that amounted to a 2-track four-wheeler trail. I got out of the vehicle, quickly walked to a small ridge, laid prone, and was able to get off a shot. It is not legal to hunt from public roads, nor is it legal to take any game species from a motorized vehicle. We made sure that we followed all state hunting regulations during our time out west. After 2 episodes, our storytelling circle has drawn to an end. As the curtains close, you may be jumping with joy. You might want an encore, which will happen in later episodes, good Lord willing, or you could be picking up your rotten tomatoes. Regardless, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to thank you for joining us in the inner sanctum and allowing us to share with you a little piece of our lives. I've listed the website for Chapman Made Knives as well as his Instagram profile in the show description. Please check out his awesome work. Remember to share us with your friends and please follow and rate us as we grow. Love in Christ.